Hello, everybody. Josh Brown here, back for another great episode on Franchise Euphoria. Well, today's episode is brought to you by IndieFranchiseLaw.com, a leading resource in the franchise space to help you if you're considering buying a franchise, turning your business into a franchise, or growing your business through a licensing or franchise structure. So go on, check it out, IndieFranchiseLaw.com. I think you'll find a lot of valuable and free information as you continue to kind of weigh franchising and licensing and the growth of your business. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's episode. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Careyann Golliver. Careyann is known as America's franchise matchmaker. Her passion began from helping grow her local family handyman business to the top-rated national franchise in the industry. The company became so successful that in 2019, it was acquired by the largest retailer-owned hardware group in the world, Ace Hardware. Still, just like millions of Americans, she worked for years in a business that wasn't all hers. She longed to build something that she could call her own and eventually found the courage to take the leap herself. With thousands of franchise concepts out there today, Careyann knows firsthand how overwhelming and confusing it can be to go at it alone. With the assistance of Careyann and Franchise Logic, which is her company, as your franchise guide, she has mastered a process that not only helps people find their perfect franchise match, but allows for abundant critical success factors for everyone: passion, process, and abundant possibilities. Careyann has decades of experience leading people through a successful franchise pre-qualification process and matching people to franchise systems that hopefully will be good for them. She takes great pride in helping candidates across the nation find the businesses of their dreams. Hope you enjoy this interview with Careyann Golliver. Hello, Careyann. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria. How you doing?
Hello, I am fantastic.
This is America's franchise matchmaker who I'm talking to. That's who you are.
That's right.
So I want to dive into that and obviously your role in placing and putting people into good positions, good fits with franchising. But I do love your backstory because I think it ties in well for what you do now. So take a minute or two and talk about your own family business and how you experienced that growth and how you got into becoming a franchise matchmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have our stories, right? And they definitely ring true and connect the dots to why I'm doing what I'm doing today. But I did find myself in a family business back in the late 90s, and we actually just really kind of fell upon it, sitting around having some good wine and food with friends and family and having the conversation of what we wanted to do when we grew up, right? Which a lot of people seem to especially now partake in, and ended up creating a business idea. It started out as repairing and fixing swamp coolers, believe it or not, which are a poor man's air conditioning unit. You know what those are?
Yes.
And then morphed into a full-blown handyman business. So all those honeydew lists of things that nobody has time to or wants to be doing. And what we saw was there was an absolute need for rising the bar out there that is pathetically low, traditionally when it comes to home services. And grew it into a multi-million-dollar business. And literally we started it in the basement of my sister and my brother-in-law's house.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was an amazing, magical ride for sure.
Were you sort of jack of all trades, just trying to do a bunch of stuff? And where did you sort of see where you focused your time through that?
Well, yeah. I mean, at first we were just trying to figure it out, right? And my sister came from teaching background. My brother-in-law actually came from the restaurant industry and ran restaurants. He was a GM for many years with Chart House restaurants.
Sure.
And I had a sales and marketing background. And then we did end up having an additional partner that came from one of the restaurants that my brother-in-law worked at. So we just kind of took our strengths and our weaknesses and pulled everything together. And what we actually did was we really listened to what the community said. So back in the late 90s, there was no such thing as the no-call list like there is today, right? And so we literally just grabbed the phone book and started calling people randomly from the white pages. Do you have a handyman service? Would you like to have a handyman service? What are the things that handyman service could do for you? What are you willing to pay for those services? And we saw a tremendous need, and we wanted to fill that void in our own community. And so we really wanted to elevate what people think of when they think of a traditional handyman. And we wanted to help all those Grandma Sallys out there that, needed a garbage disposable changed or a screen door changed, because the normal contractors pass those up every day.
No, I mean, I think that's a really smart way to do it. Just go to your community, see what their needs are, and then tailor your services based on that.
Exactly. So that's what we did. We had great success. Someone came across us and said, gosh, you guys should think about franchising your business. And we were like, wow, let's learn about that. And we thought, wow, how fascinating. We can duplicate our business model. We can help other people escape corporate America and become their own boss, employ people in their community, and create an asset that they own. So in the latter part of 2001, we franchised our business and grew. We were the top handyman service for over a decade in that category. And that's how I first got immersed into franchising. And we used consultants like myself today to help us grow our system with really strong candidates. And it just made a lot of sense that we were not just talking to anybody who was interested, that we were actually focusing on talking to people who understood how to manage and lead and understood how to read a P&L, because those are the kinds of people we're looking for to operate and run our franchise. We had great success. Last September, the Handyman franchise was acquired by Ace Hardware. So now it's Ace Handyman Services. And, the rest is history. But what I found through that journey is there's a lot of misguided people out there that have a true passion to be a business owner, but they rely on Google or friends or family to tell them which franchise to buy, which is never a good thing.
It's kind of crazy if you think about it, but it happens, as you and I both know from our industry. It happens all the time. What a great story. I like that for this interview because I think it gives people a real good background of how you came into the franchising business. I mean, what really got you focused in then on helping people, serving as the matchmaker to help match these people up with the right systems?
Well, again, it goes to, when we would have people come to our discovery day, right, to potentially get awarded to buy our franchise, we would ask them, why do you want to be a business owner and why this franchise? And often we got some really scary answers, oh, well, I like to work on things, or, I am a carpenter, or I used to do this, or I used to do that. And so again, as the franchise system, we were not looking for the worker bees. We didn't want people working in the business and buying themselves a job. We were looking for people who could lead and manage and build a business. And so I saw a definite need. And like I said, we use consultants like myself to help us grow our franchise. And it's really a win-win, because we're focusing on, every franchisor has an ideal image, if you will, of a potential candidate that they are confident can execute their blueprint, their proven model successfully. So it's a win for the franchisor to be brought these people who are skill set qualified as well as financially, right? Because they need to make sure they can afford to go into business with them in the areas that they're looking to grow. I mean, when we're growing our franchise, the first area we sold out obviously was Colorado, because that's our stomping ground. And so for the seeker, it's really focusing on them and doing an internal self-discovery of what are your skill sets, what are the things you excel at, where are you weak, what is your spend tolerance, what are your preferences that would make up an ideal opportunity to justify you actually doing some proper due diligence, because this is an investment. It's huge. And so it helps them really narrow, because as you know, there's thousands and thousands of different franchise opportunities out there today, but they're not all created equal, and they're not all good, right? There's some great things, and there's a lot of crap out there. And so people have to become educated, but they've never done this before. And so they really need to be guided and coached on how to conduct a proper due diligence so that they have success. So they don't just buy or look at a Dunkin' Donuts because they love donuts, right? Because being a consumer at Dunkin' Donuts is a very different experience than operating and owning a Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's where we get to Franchise Logic, which is your business. Tell us about franchise. I mean, there's there are a lot of consultants out there. I mean, there's lots of business consultants, there's franchise consultants. I have a great respect for franchise consultants because I think at their core, you're trying to really help people find good business opportunities. But talk about some of the things that makes you unique and makes you stick out from other consultants in the industry.
I really pride myself in the franchise organizations that I represent. I don't just represent any franchise. So I personally meet face to face until the pandemic happened, of course, but face to face every 6 months with my franchise partners. And I sit down with them and we talk about how business is going. We talk about who their ideal candidate is. Has that shifted? Do they have any resales? Any upcoming objections to the business and how they're going to overcome those future objections, because you and I know there's always going to be hiccups in any business. I really take pride in representing what I feel like is a really high caliber of franchisors. They don't have a bunch of lawsuits. They don't have a bunch of closures. They have phenomenal support and training. I understand the role that's going to be identified that's successful to operate their business. And so I think that's a big part of it. But then also being a very active listener with the seekers and really helping them. Honestly, sometimes we go through this journey and we uncover business ownership is not the right path for them. And in my opinion, that's a victory.
Well, sure.
Save them a tremendous amount of time and money, right?
Yeah, I mean, so how do you, I mean, when you're working with people, how do you take them through? I mean, a lot of people when they're, you talk to a lot of people that say, "Oh, I've considered the franchise," or "I thought about a franchise and then I decided to do this," or, "I'm still thinking about a franchise." I mean, what are some of the factors that you look for and try to find so that, you know, when you're helping somebody, you can either help them decide that it's not good for them, which is a benefit sometimes, and then, or help them decide that it is, and then find the right one for them.
Well, make no mistake, they are making all the decisions on the journey. I'm just simply their guide. But what we're doing is the methodology is we're delivering data. This is a very emotional decision, even though it's an investment, but it has to be backed up by data, not preconceived notions, not head trash, because we all have it, right? I have my own head trash about certain things that I'm not fully educated on. But so having these people keep an open mind and really understanding, first we need to look inward. Why are you looking at business ownership? Why do you need a business? Why do you want a business? What are your aspirations with that business? What kind of role do you want to play with that business? What is your exit strategy once you get in the business? How are you going to get out of the business? What are your motivators? What are your drivers? And sometimes we get in the middle of the process and then they actually determine this is a lot more work than what I want to do. I'm just going to go get another job, right? Or I don't want to manage people, or I don't want to have to be responsible for this business. I want to just clock in and clock out and just pay my dues, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's a journey of helping them really understand through the process that I've really mastered a day in the life of owning these franchises. So I typically match people up to multiple franchise concepts to compare and contrast. And then they really go through a very thorough, why does this business exist? Who is going to support me? What is their background and success? How does this business make money? And then get them talking to actual franchise owners to hear from the horse's mouth, why did you buy this business? What was your past career before getting into this franchise? Are you happy? Are you making money? Would you recommend somebody else buy this franchise? So it's all about really coming full circle and having people understand that these are real businesses. Like, you can't just buy a franchise, set up shop and expect it to make much money. There's a lot of work involved. So having them go through that to really see what it's going to take to be successful, and most importantly, can they see themselves executing this model and being successful? And so it's really a self-elimination. And of course, you had to get approved to buy a franchise, but when the feeling is mutual on both ends with the franchise company and the franchise seeker, it's actually also very magical because everything starts flowing correctly and the excitement heightens and there's really a true match. So I tell my candidates, we're gonna go on some blind dates and we're gonna have some courtship and we may or may not get to the altar.
Well, and talk about a little bit, because I think it's fascinating. I love the fact that Franchise Logic is an independent consulting firm, which is a bit unique in franchising, right? I mean, you have some of the larger franchise consulting firms. How have you navigated through all of that? Because essentially the thing about it is it's a service that as you're working with people, it's free to them, but you're matching them up with vetted systems that you're working with on the franchisor side. So how do you go through that process, and how did you decide to make this independent?
And that's a great question. So I am independently owned and operated, but I am under the umbrella of one of the largest consultant groups, which is FranChoice.
You are? Okay. So you're under their umbrella. So walk me through that a little bit.
So FranChoice think of it as like Century 21 real estate. So FranChoice is the corporate office, and they will bring on as independently owned consultants. So we are not an employee of FranChoice. We are not a franchisee of FranChoice because it's not a franchise system like some of the other consulting groups out there. So obviously we have to have extensive business and franchising experience to even be considered. So with our handyman franchise, we worked with FranChoice and their consultant group to bring us highly qualified candidates to help us grow.
I figured there's probably some tie in there. So you had that relationship with them for years.
I had that relationship. We also worked with lots of other consultant groups as well. But, FranChoice is, in my opinion, the only one I would have considered becoming a part of just because of their reputation. So they have the contracts with the franchisors. And then we are independently owned and operated consultant companies that work under the FranChoice umbrella.
Okay.
Just like a real estate company.
Well, and that makes good sense, because that's how oftentimes they set this up. But sometimes, you have your true independence. But what's hard about that, as I'm sure and for the audience to know, is that, in order to get tied in and have the right opportunities for franchisees, oftentimes you have to be part of a national network to get those opportunities.
Right.
Well, that's, I know that through the interesting thing about your background is that you do bring so much experience that ties directly to not just the franchise business, but the fact that you literally have been a part of a business that you started and grew and then sold, which, is the dream for a lot of people. So
it is the American dream.
So yeah. I got a question for you that I would love your answer, and there's not a right or wrong answer, but you obviously have an entrepreneurial spirit about you as well. How is that for you to help other people? But at the end of the day, it's their decision and not your decision. You know what I mean? I mean, you're used to, you go, you see things, you might see, oh, wow, this is a perfect opportunity for this person. They bring this background, they bring this experience, they bring this, passion for it. They're a perfect fit. And they may not see that. I mean, is that frustrating at all?
It really is not frustrating because, again, they have to want it and need it. And so if there isn't that want or need, then they're probably not going to be exceptionally well at it, right? So I feel like at the end, they still always make the right decision because they're in control of the decisions. Not to toot my own horn, but I got to be honest, I'm about 90% on my matching. That doesn't happen very often. In fact, I just had another candidate, wonderful couple here in Colorado. We started working in the end of January. They had been looking at franchises on their own and had not moved forward with anything. They heard me on the radio and they said, "Oh my gosh, this is America's Franchise Matchmaker. We got to call her and talk to her and maybe she can help us." So we started working together. They moved forward. So I showed them 3 concepts. They moved forward with one of the 3 in February, which happened to be an essential needs based business, non facility based, which basically means, they can get up and running in 60 to 90 days. And then, of course, we know, what followed February was the pandemic. And just a week and a half ago, they purchased the second out of the 3 that I showed them. They bought a brick and mortar business.
Really?
Yes. So while it's not an everyday occurrence, I have had quite a few candidates where I showed 2 or 3 options that narrowed it down to 2 and didn't want to choose and bought both of them. Depending on the role that they play in the business, it is possible to purchase multiple businesses at the same time in a franchise.
I think, yes, that is true. And you touched upon and you hit upon, COVID and the pandemic that we're in right now. I think it's a great point to talk about because it's top of mind for everybody, and especially in franchising. I'm curious what you're seeing with the people that you're working with. I know obviously it's a very fluid situation. Are you feeling or sensing from the people that you're talking to that people are starting to really try, I don't want to say get back in the game because I don't think everybody got out of the game, but there was certainly a pause, right? I mean, everything was sort of paused for a little bit.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that momentum and inertia grow to people seeing the opportunities that are out there coming out of COVID?
Well, I mean, coming out of COVID is kind of a scary statement in itself, right? Because it seems like we don't really know. It changes by the
That's
hour.
true.
It seems like some days, we're going backwards instead of forward. But, here's the interesting thing about franchising. Franchising is not an industry, right? It's just simply a methodology of how you conduct business. And so franchising is soaring. And, although 2008 and 9/11 were totally different and uncomparable to this health related shutdown, I have had record months of placements starting in April. So the people that I am working with, I think you really hit it on the head when you said a pause. And in some ways, I think it was a necessary pause, but it stopped people. It forced them to reevaluate their lives. Now, I was working with some people prior to COVID that did kind of step back. And one of them in particular was like, "Careyann, the sky is falling," right? And rightfully so, because they were in the Jersey market, right? So kind of froze a little bit, but it was only a little bit. And then he said, this is only temporary. We will eventually get past this. And I still have these goals. And ended up moving forward with 3 territories of a salon suite.
Which are very popular these days. I'll tell
Very
you.
popular, yeah. I would say that another woman that I was working with, another brick and mortar business, started working together pre-COVID, worked all the way through the height of the pandemic, and she also moved forward with a 3-pack of a wax salon, and nail salon. So very few of the people, and even the people that paused, have came back and continued to move forward. And I think it's because of the pause and of the forcing of making people slow down and say, what do I really want to do? Right? What do I really want to do with my life? Do I really want to go back into the office when things start opening back up? Or is now the right time for me to fulfill my lifelong dream of being a business owner?
Yeah, and as you pointed out, and it's so true, franchising is a methodology, and it's a methodology that's been proven over and over and over again. Now, that doesn't mean it works for everybody, but if you look, I mean, you mentioned 2008, you mentioned 9/11. I mean, all those times, all these times where there's just been circumstances on a national or worldwide basis, it seems like franchising has been pretty resilient to those. And
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
that's not to say that it's the perfect. I mean, I don't want to mislead people to think like, "Oh, just go buy a franchise." I mean, it certainly matters what franchise you're considering. I mean, I have on my website, videos and so forth. And it's always like, the question I get all the time is, "What's the hottest franchise?" And I'm always like,
Yes.
"Why do you care?" Like, it should be, "What's the hottest franchise that's right for you?" That should be the
That's
question.
what I say.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, people say that all the time. What's the hottest franchise to buy? What's everyone? And I say the hottest franchise is the one that you can afford, that's available in your market, that takes advantage of your skill sets. That's the hottest franchise to buy.
Yeah, because people think, and they think, "Oh, franchising is just Subway, McDonald's." They don't realize that every part of our economy has been franchised. And and so it runs the gamut. I mean, healthcare franchises have been exploding. I mean, you mentioned the salon type franchise, those type of service-based franchise. I mean, you have all these ones, but it makes a difference as to not just your experience. Obviously, that's huge in the analysis, but your skill set, your background. Do you know what you're getting into? I remember years ago, I've worked with people with sandwich shops and so forth. And I remember years and years ago, I've worked with people with Subway as an example. I mean, there's many others, but I remember I asked somebody one time, I said, "Why do you want to buy a Subway? I'm just curious." And they said, "Oh, well, I love their sandwiches." And
Uh,
I was like, "Well, what do you know about I mean, do you understand that, like, you're gonna be in there? Like, you go in and buy your sandwich, and then you go out, you eat it, you go on with your day. You're gonna be in there 12 hours a day. You're gonna be back there, watching somebody cut onions, you're gonna be doing all these things." And it's like they're like, "Oh, no, I never," they just think about their own limited experience with being a consumer of the brand as opposed to what it means to run the business. And that's where folks like yourself come in handy to be able to knock some sense into them and be like, "Okay, you need to understand this before this may not be a good opportunity for you at all." I've had people I've talked to, Careyann, who told me the first thing, they just didn't want to have to deal with a lot of people, but yet they wanted to look at a retail franchise. And I'm like, "Well, what are
oh,
you thinking?"
yeah.
So
Right,
anyways,
exactly. Well, and I think, society has taught us or ingrained in our brains, just follow your passions and everything will be rainbows and unicorns, right? Well, that's not true in business, right? I mean, yes, you have to be passionate, you have to have a fire in your belly about something, but instead of being passionate about the widget or the product or the service, be passionate about being the boss. Be passionate about what your business provides your community and what it can provide your lifestyle and your own personal bank account. I had a friend that loved coffee, right? I mean, he loved everything about coffee. He drank more coffee than anyone I've ever met on this planet. And he's like, Careyann, help me buy a coffee franchise. I'm like, Matthew, no. Like, that's like the worst thing you could do. And he's like, no, he ended up, I didn't work with him. He ended up buying a franchise that had not even trademarked their name.
oh god.
Then the franchisees got into a lawsuit. You probably know, being a lawyer, which one it was, but here in Colorado. And
Yep.
then he had to rename his coffee business. And then guess who came knocking in the strip mall?
Of
Starbucks.
course.
And then he's like, Careyann, help me sell my coffee business. I'm like, Matthew. That's how I tell people, don't be like Matthew. Like, I mean, he ended up divorced. He doesn't drink coffee anymore. He hates it. He can't even stand the smell of it. He ruined his passion for it, right? And he lost a crap load of money too. So don't be like Matthew.
Don't be like Matthew. I mean, look, I mean, as the reality is, if you have a passion, you may love to be a woodworker, and you may love to make, beautiful wood tables. And I think that's wonderful. But if you're just making them and not selling them, it's a hobby. If you're making them and selling them and running it, then it's a business. And so you have to understand the difference between the two. This is the other thing I will say, this is that sometimes people find their passion through the business as well, and maybe it's something they didn't already have. So I think that's also a big misnomer that you see, is people feel like, well, this is my passion, and so I can't develop any other passions. Well, a lot of people find a lot of passion when they have success in business, right? It's like, wow,
Yes.
this is great. I have more control over my day. I can run things the way I want to run. And now they've never experienced that, and from there they start to develop other passions around that, where otherwise they didn't have it because they never experienced it in their life. So
Right.
I think I agree with you. I think passion is super important. Don't get me wrong, you people, but you have to really quantify and qualify that, because passion without a good business model is a hobby, and it's not going to pay back that loan. it's not gonna it's not gonna
Exactly.
pay your employees. I mean, it's not gonna do that for you.
Yeah, I feel truly blessed that I can help people and navigate them and coach and guide them. And, the ideal scenario is we're going to find, if I did my job correctly, they're going to have a really, really hard decision to make. And, if nothing else, they have more clarity on what paths are not right for them if it's not a good fit. So they don't leave empty handed.
Well, listen, if you want to learn more, and I encourage you to, about America's Franchise Matchmaker, go to franchise-logic.com, franchise-logic.com. You can also find Careyann on LinkedIn. I'm sure probably most of the social media sites as well. Is there any other place where you prefer for them to go outside your website,
Yeah,
Careyann?
the website's great. There's all kinds of free downloadable digital assets on there, great information, videos. So the website's really the best place to go.
Well, that's fantastic, and thanks for coming on, sharing your story.
Thanks
I
for
think
having
obviously
me.
I love bringing on people who have a lot of experience and background in this because I just think that that is so valuable. And too often, like you said, unfortunately, in my line of work on the legal side, I unfortunately will talk to people and they've already signed the franchise agreement and everything's gone bad because they didn't do this upfront due diligence. And when I say, well, how did you decide on the franchise? And the answer is, well, I did a Google search and spent 2 weeks, or 3 weeks looking at it. I'm blown away by that. I'm just blown away
I
by
know.
that because as you and I both know, the average franchise agreement's 10 years. And then, of course, there's all sorts of, restrictive kinds of covenants and language that if they try to get out of it, of what occurs. And so, you got to be smart. You got to be smart. Franchisees need to be smart because once you get in it, they're very, very hard to get out of. So I highly encourage people to contact people like Careyann because you need experienced people to make good decisions.
Informed
Franchise.
decisions. Yeah. And,
Yeah,
just someone to look out for you and make sure you're asking the right questions.
absolutely. And half the battle too is, maybe even more than half the battle. It's not sometimes finding the one franchise. It's about eliminating a whole lot of others. And that can help get you down to the one or the area or the sector that you want to be in. So again, I encourage people go to franchise-logic.com. And thank you, Careyann, for coming on. I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Franchise Euphoria. If you enjoyed this episode or have enjoyed the podcast in general, I would really appreciate it if you could go to iTunes and leave me a rating and review. It really helps to get this podcast out to more and more people. So the easy way to do it is go to iTunes and in the search box, put in Franchise Euphoria. You will then see my cover art and you click on my smiling face that says Franchise Euphoria and then click on the link that says ratings and reviews. It's that simple, but boy, oh boy, does it mean the world to me when people leave ratings and reviews. And like I said, it really helps get the show out there. Once again, would love it if you would go to iTunes and leave a rating and review if you enjoyed this episode or other episodes of the show. And until the next time, happy franchising.